Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome. I am Kelly Hoey by way of introduction. I'm the author of Build Your Dream Network. And this is my little crazy project called Planet Hoey, where I get to talk to amazing people in my network. And the name of this little crazy project is because of a reader of my book who made reference to the price of admission. Buying the book was worth it to enter Planet Hoey. So I think it's funny. Some people may think it's strange, but whatever, it's my planet, I'm doing it. Today, I have Sarah Feingold, who is, oh God, where do I start? She's beyond awesome. Co-founder of The Fourth Floor. She was employee number 17 and the first attorney at Etsy. She's a graduate of Syracuse University College of Law. She wrote for the Daily Record. You worked for a firm up in Rochester. Then, by some people's account, boom, magically, rainbows and unicorns, you land in New York City as 17th employee at Etsy. All right, I've heard the story. I want others to hear the story. Go.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me on your planet. It's a really lovely planet, Kelly. Thanks. It's great. So yeah, I'm an attorney. And I was Etsy's first attorney and 17th employee. And people want to know the story of how did that happen. And how that happened was I'm an artist. And so I've been making art since I was 12 years old. I'm a jeweler. I love jewelry. I went to law school because I wanted to represent small businesses, art businesses, that sort of thing. And I chose my law school by their art program. Syracuse has a really great jewelry program. I'm sure like a lot of lawyers choose their law schools by their art programs.
But you know what? That's great. I mean, I did not know that before knowing you. So big shout out to Syracuse University College of Law. Listen, if you're thinking you want to do arts and work for creatives, there's your school, peeps. Okay.
There it is. They're terrific. And so after law school, I couldn't land a job doing what I wanted to do. So I did what anybody who can't find a job doing what they exactly want to do does, and that's find a job that's close, right? You got to make money. You got to try to work on your skill set and get some really great practices in your back pocket so that you can scale yourself and your career. So I was at a job at a firm in Rochester, New York, and I was selling my jewelry on the side to boutiques. And to kind of like build up my own professional brand, I started pitching articles to magazines about, copyright law for people who bead, jewelry makers, that sort of thing. I was talking with art galleries about, intellectual property talks for artists. And I found out about Etsy and I was obsessed. And I started selling my jewelry on Etsy and reading every single thing about Etsy, their policies everywhere. And so then one day I was at work at the law firm and I was scrolling through and I saw some policies that I thought were a little bit strange. And so I reached out to Etsy's customer support team and I said, hey, I have some ideas for you. About some of your policies. Well, one thing led to another, and I was on the call with Etsy's founder and CEO, Rob Kalin, and we chit-chatted a little bit, and I hung up the phone, and I realized Etsy didn't have an in-house attorney. If they did have an in-house attorney, that person wasn't doing a very good job. So I booked a flight from Rochester, New York, where I was living at the time, to New York City, and I called Rob back and I said, I'm coming down for an interview. You're going to hire me to be your first in-house attorney. And he did.
Wow. Wow. All right. So for anyone who may be just joining us, I'm Kelly Hoey, author of Build Your Dream Network. My guest here on Planet Hoey is Sarah Feingold. If you're watching passively there on YouTube or Periscope, jump in and let us know you're here, because you know what? We're going to be able to take your questions. Lord knows I got a ton of questions for you, so we could sit here. We know we both can sit here and talk for an hour, easy peasy. But if someone's watching and they've got questions, I want you to dive in. So I want to dive back. You said you found a job that was close. All right, is Rochester near Syracuse? That's not what you're talking about.
Oh no, I need money.
Talk about what you mean by close, because I used to be a practicing attorney. I did commercial mortgage-backed securities, which is not the sexy area of law that associates, I was a senior associate, what the associates, junior associates wanted to do. And I had to show them where there was transferable skills to the sexy stuff, the M&A, the whatever else that they really wanted to do. Talk about that, what you meant by close in terms of taking a job for your skill set.
Right. Well, I was fresh out of law school and I wanted to try this whole law firm thing. And I really wanted to help small businesses. I wanted to help, I wanted to represent artists. I wanted to represent, the small mom and pop businesses and help them scale. Maybe do intellectual property. That's what I was really passionate about. And, I interviewed for some of those jobs and I really couldn't find one, or they weren't hiring me. And so I thought, anything business law related would probably get me in that direction. I just needed to build up my skill set because I had never worked at a law firm before. I'd never been a lawyer before. I just passed the bar. So I thought, it's important to pay your bills and maybe, practice this career that I had been working my whole life to build up to. I should probably do something along those lines.
Yeah. Okay. And then talk more too, because I love this idea that you were very aware of the skill set that you thought you needed. Besides saying, all right, I'm going to go and work at this firm and they're going to do business law and this is what's going to get me closer. What else did you do?
So I realized that what I was doing at the firm wasn't exactly where I wanted to be long term. I was learning some really great skills and meeting some great people, but it wasn't where I wanted to be long term. So I realized it was up to me to create my own opportunities for myself. It's up to me to own my own career. And so that's when I started reaching out to communities to see how I could add value. So for example, while I was in law school, and I started this while I was in law school. While I was in law school, I was taking these jewelry classes and I just started thinking about all the questions that some of my colleagues and the other jewelry students would have, the legal questions. And so I turned their feedback into an ebook called Copyright for Artists, because I really just wanted to help. I wanted to use my law degree and all of this knowledge to better the world and to better the communities that I was really passionate about. And so when I was at the law firm in Rochester, I wasn't really doing that. And so I took it upon myself to try to find some opportunities to give back to the community. And that also helped me scale my career.
That's awesome. And you were going to conferences and doing things as well. Am I remembering our conversation from way back?
Good memory. You're good at what you do.
Well, it's also one of those things that people don't think of. They often think that you can only start joining kind of your future career networks or communities once you have the job. But you were building the community you needed to do your job before you had that job. Yeah,
that's correct. And the way I see it, when you're a lawyer or anything, you could go to the legal conferences and you can learn about the practice of law. And then you can go to the conferences where maybe your clients are going to be. So you could learn more about, for me, it was the artistic community. And so I was going to, stone setting conferences and learning about beads and that sort of thing. And the truth of the matter is, when you are surrounded by people who aren't like you, who are the communities that you want to act in and to help out, those are your clients. And so I realized to myself, I was the only lawyer in the room full of these potential clients, and I was talking to them about law. And if worst came to worst, I could be a solo practitioner and I would know a lot of clients who could really use my assistance, and that would have helped me scale, a small business myself.
Right. Amazing. Okay, let's go back to when you realized at Etsy that you saw their problem, weirdo thing with the policies. All right. Because I think this is another important point, because people often see, you likely get these emails, I get these emails where someone says, hey, I think you have a problem. Why don't we get on the phone and talk about it? You had a back and forth with customer service. It wasn't just I think you may have a problem. You really pinpointed the problem. So talk about that a little if you can, because I think that's another distinguishing thing, as opposed to just your industry has a problem or let's talk, you might have a problem. You ding, pinpointed it.
I redlined it. I went deep. I showed value add as soon as humanly possible. Like, I think that it's really important when you're interviewing for a job or anything like that to take worries off of your employer's plate, to add value immediately, to show that you can be trusted so that they can do what they do best. You will do what you do best. Yep. And so that was one of the things that I did, is I had a conversation about how I would have changed some things. I printed out what the policy, I redlined it, and I sent it back. And then I just booked a flight from Rochester to New York City, and everyone thought I was nuts. Like, what are you doing? There's no job description. There's nothing. This is a tiny 17-person company, a startup. Like, who knows if it's going to go anywhere? And I just thought, I really, these are my people. This is my community. I believe in this company. And I think that there's value that I can add to it.
Yeah. So when you said you redlined and made these comments, did that go to the then founder and CEO as well as to the customer service, and that's why he took your call?
I don't know. Well, that was after our call. Yeah, we had the call, and I explained some of my concerns, and then I just started redlining it, and I sent it over to him, and hey, here's my suggestion. And listen, a lot of lawyers are going to be like, oh my God, attorney-client privilege. Oh, now you're a client. All these things going off in your head. But sometimes you just have to take these risks because I think the lawyer brain just goes into worst case scenario. But you got to take these risks in your career every once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
I was there 9 years. I'll take the company public. Forgot about that.
Okay, well, let's talk a little about that, because there's all sorts of stuff to unpack on there. And I love this. I want to highlight. You book the flight. This is where I often say to people, if you're not your own best career investment, and it screams loud and clear for me through your own career, is you weren't waiting for somebody else to send you the conference. You weren't waiting for someone to ask you for a ticket to come and interview. You were like, you know what? I believe in myself. I'm going to try this. And yeah, I
was the only one in the room. Listen, if they would have put out we need a lawyer, how many people would have applied? When I used to interview people at Etsy, when I needed when I started hiring lawyers eventually, I had to build out the legal team. I was the only one there. You know how many resumes I would get? Holy cow. There was no way. There's no way that they would have hired me. I would have been in the middle of a giant stack of resumes.
Go to that. I was chatting with someone earlier. How do you get resumes when you get a big stack? How do you pull the ones out of anywhere to find the use, the people who are really going to add value versus someone who might look good on paper? How do you sort those out?
And help me. I don't know. I think that there are whole careers based on that. I mean, the first thing that I would do is have a conversation with them on the phone, because I think paper is very different than in person. I really also believe in some sort of limited homework assignment to see about skill set, to see about communication style. It's a lot, right? You need to invest in your hiring practices, because then you're going to invest in your training, and then you're investing in your people. And if you get the wrong hire, it could be awful for your company. So you really need to take the time.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back. You start at Etsy. You realize you're employee number one. You basically did your own onboarding and ordered your own desk and all the rest of it. Talk about, here you are now, not only, I want to say, advising them on the stuff you're passionate about, you're doing a whole lot more. Talk about that continual learning process and all the rest of it.
Yeah. So I didn't know what I was doing ever. And I will admit that. Here's the thing. When you're at a small company, when you're at any company, when you're the only lawyer, you are surrounded by issues, and you just have to figure out how to prioritize those issues, what you can deal with today, tomorrow, in the long term. You need to get a network. You need to get your tribe. I didn't know anyone in New York. I didn't know lawyers in New York. And so I just started reaching out to people. And just the same way that I was reaching out to people to ask them, hey, can I speak at your conference? I'm going to speak on on this specific topic. Or can I write for this publication that you have on this specific topic? I started reaching out to experts in New York and asking them, if we could have a conversation about specific topics that impacted my client Etsy. And, a lot of times I heard nothing, or I heard no, but there are some amazing people who welcomed me into their communities. And that's the way that I was able to scale Etsy, their legal team.
Right.
And then I started building my own community because I realized that there are a lot of startup attorneys that feel really isolated. And this was back in the mid 2000s, and there weren't many of us, but there are a couple. And so, I started the General Counsel of Foursquare and the General Counsel of Meetup. And we would just chat with each other on the phone and meet for drinks and, trade resources because that's all that we could do. And that's the only way we could stay sane.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's, again, the sort of the thread that runs through your career of not waiting to be asked. Like, it would be lovely if there had already been a General Counsel of Startups meetup and you said, well, there's not. I need it. There's got to be other people who need this.
Yeah. And it was informal. And now there is. And now there are plenty of networks that are amazing and they're generous resources and they're great out there. But back in the day, I didn't, if there was something, I didn't know of it. Yeah. So it was just me and a couple friends, like literally crying over drinks sometimes.
So, but you know what? Someone asked me once, how do you build like the dream network? And I'm like, one relationship at a time.
Yeah, who should I speak to about this topic? And listen, outside counsel would suggest conferences for me to attend or things that I should be reading or people I should talk to. And so it's one at a time, really.
Yeah, you keep asking about it. And the other thing I keep noticing in your story is the word specific comes up. You weren't sort of generally throwing out questions and reaching out to people as in, can I pick your brain or can I ask for help? You were, hey, about this topic. That's what I'm assuming. You're like, hey, I've identified you as someone who knows about this and I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
Would that be basically?
Well, that's right. Because otherwise, how are they even going to know what to talk to me about? Like, we're going to talk about the weather? Like, no, everyone has limited time. Let's cut to the chase.
And that's not just, I always say to people, sort of a New Yorker thing at this point, but also too, it's, people are always frustrated when they reach out to people and they don't get answers, but that kind of respective time and respective reputation, but also is kind of make it easy for people. Our brain capacity to help is huge, but it gets really closed down if you don't ask us for something that we can really give you.
That's right. One of the things that I remember from the very beginning is there's a professor, Susan Scafidi, and she's a fashion law professor over at Fordham. And she was one of the first people that I reached out to because I just assumed that Etsy had a lot of fashion law issues that I was going to have to face. And I didn't know very much about that. And, I think I reached out to her as something pretty generic, unfortunately. And she said, hey, I'm doing this continuing legal education. Would you like to come? And when I got there, she had saved a seat next to her for me. And I just felt so warm and fuzzy. It was so nice. And to this day, I chat with her about random things every once in a while. I speak to her class about my career. So we've really kept in touch. But, even if it's someone reaches out to you and isn't specific, if you're speaking or if there's something that you can point them to, right. It was like really probably not very difficult for her to just send me the link and to save me a seat. Like that was really nice.
Yeah. And that's also such a great point. I was thinking that too, is that sometimes someone will ask for advice and they may say, hey, can I pick your brain over, back in the day, coffee, but can I pick your brain over Zoom? I'm looking for, and you can say, well, I just wrote about that, or I just did. So on that, just writing about that, let's talk about your latest post on Above the Law. And for anyone who's just catching this either on YouTube or Periscope, I'm Kelly Hoey. My bangs are driving me crazy. I have to fix them. And I'm the author of Build Your Dream Network, and I'm chatting with Sarah Feingold, who was employee number 17 and the first attorney at Etsy. And we're talking careers and like building your own career palace, like making it happen for yourself, and the work that goes into that as opposed to waiting for someone to magically make it happen for you. So you write for Above the Law. Talk about your latest piece on building a career with your PJs.
Yeah, in your sweatpants. So when I was an attorney for Etsy for over 9 years, helped take the company public. Then I went to a company called Vroom, Vroom, and we sell cars online. I was their general counsel for over 3 years. And I realized I needed like a career change. And so one of the things that I did was I reached out to a bunch of law schools to see, you know, with a couple ideas of the ways that we could collaborate together. And one of the projects that I'm working on with NYU Law School is a mentorship project. And so I've been talking with law students about their career paths, and with the COVID virus and what's happened with the pandemic, I thought that, you know, law students would have better things to do than like hang out with me. I thought that so the mentorship project was over lunch, and I was like, oh, sweet, free food. This is why so many people are RSVPing. They want to have free food. I mean, look, I was a law student.
I worked in big law. That's the way it worked. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
That's it. Well, you know, how are you going to get someone to show up? Free food. And so I figured that
Thailand fan, thank you for joining us.
I figured that once the food was no longer on the table, literally, because, you know, what am I going to like, hey, would you like to share this pretend food? I wouldn't have anyone show up for these meetings. And I was wrong. My virtual free food lunches were just as subscribed as the actual ones. Wow. And when I was talking with the law students, I just realized that I think lawyers are in a place right now where we're really uncomfortable. A lot of lawyers aren't taking the chances that maybe I took in my career because they're so used to just following the path.
Yep.
And so basically the article that I just wrote for Above the Law is about how, you know, if we're fortunate enough to be healthy and safe right now, we can kind of look beyond ourselves and look at some communities that we're passionate about and see what kind of value we can add. And we can join these communities and really help them out if we have the ability to do so right now. And that's not only going to help the communities, but that can really help our careers too.
Right. I remember such a good post. I'm going to post it again. I posted it on my Twitter account. I will post it again. I remember, you know, so the financial crisis back in 2008. So I had been the manager of professional development for a global law firm. And then I had moved over to marketing and building their alumni program. And then layoffs happened on Wall Street, which then happened in big law firms. And I remember, you know, associates who were laid off, who had been the associates I had onboarded as manager of professional development. So I'd known them for the first, you know, 0 to 4 or 5 years of their career. And I remember them sitting in my office now when I was, you know, down there doing alumni programs. And they were like, yeah, should have listened to you, Kelly. Should have built our network. And I'm like, so what are we going to do about it? Like, what have you got? Where do we start? So for law students right now, I don't care if you're first year, a second year, or a third year, like, where are the ones you have? Are you nurturing them? Are you growing them? And like, this is where the forward planning when your career, you may not know exactly what area of law or where you're going to practice or what your career will be in a year or 2 years or 5 years, but you do know that you should have networks. So start like building those, and not just with other lawyers.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's your competition, really. Especially if they're in the very similar space.
Right. Yeah. Unless you're going to do a Supreme Court practice and you're only going to get your deal flow from lawyers. Yes. You know,
yeah.
And sometimes I want to say networking with your competitors, as in some ways you did when you were, you know, brought together your group of GCs. Sometimes networking with your competitors, so to speak, is the right thing to do because they're dealing with the same things, and you know what, they'll let you know about opportunities or whatever. So,
but even networking with your adversaries, like, you know, I think one of the reasons why, it sounds egotistical, but like, you know, I was able to be successful at Etsy. I would get a lot of cease and desist letters, obviously, you can imagine, because there's a lot of third-party content on Etsy. And just erring on the side of kindness has always been one of the things that I've tried to do in my life and career. And I could imagine that when people get cease and desist letters, sometimes they call people up or they try to argue or they yell at them. I've been yelled at on the phone like a lot. And, you know, what I think is, like, there's been so many times that I've sat down at a conference next to an adversary who's like, Sarah, I sent you cease and desist letters. Oh, how are you? What's going on? You know, and you know, we're all just trying to make a buck. We're all just trying to live our lives, not get the COVID. Like, this is all we're trying to do. We're all human. So really erring on the side of kindness, because every communication, as you say, like every communication is is networking, right? And I always would like my brand to be erring on the side of kindness.
Yep. Yeah. Someone asked me recently in a conversation, they said, when do you decide someone's not useful in your network? And I said, my only filter is the jerk factor. Like if there's something with their reputation, something with their bona fide, something with like who they are as a person, like a complete and utter jerk, I don't care how high up the letterhead or corporate ladder or whatever they are, they're a jerk, don't want to have anything to do with them. But you're right. Like you never know where your next opportunity, it may be because you were the kind person or you were the adversary who performed so well on the other side of a transaction or whatever that someone says, I'll have that on my team. Thanks very much.
Right. You never know where your next opportunity is going to come, and you never know who's going to be sitting next to you. How embarrassing would that have been? And it happened to me so many times, like at INTA, like so many times I would sit next to somebody because I got a lot of cease and desist letters, right?
Yeah.
That would have been totally like,
Yeah, no, you would have found yourself sitting by yourself.
Might have been okay. Social distancing.
There's a row and there's an empty seat. There's a seat taken. Everyone's like, oh my God, it's her. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. This is all amazing advice and awesome that those students, kudos to your students who are showing up for that mentoring, because it's so easy for people to say, no, I don't have to worry about that right now.
I didn't think they were going to show up. I really, I thought I'll just cancel them until we can, have lunch together again. And then I thought, it's already in my calendar. I'll just do it by Zoom. If no one shows up, big deal. And they all showed up. I think we're really concerned about the future, about our careers. It's got to be really stressful to be in school right now.
Oh, totally. And if, you know what, I'm going to say it out here publicly. If I can ever help you with that, I would more than happy to come to one of your Zoom lunches, provide my own lunch. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy.
Nice. Thank you.
When I, think about my own career, I sort of reflected on it recently. When I graduated from, high school, graduate law school. Let me think. Decided to change out of law into law firm management, and then having a job altogether to pursue an unknown. All of those turning points in my career happened at economic downturns.
By design? Just coincidence?
Just life. Yeah, just life. I know.
You can't plan for everything, right?
Right. So every time I think of, of panicking, I'm like, oh no, this is a pattern in my life of, so you get through these things, kids. There's the lesson.
And then you start your own planet.
Right. You create your own planet. Like you did. You created your own career. You created okay. Let's talk about what you're doing now. Let's talk about the fourth floor.
Please talk about the fourth floor.
Okay, talk about how that came about, where you saw the opportunity, because you are brilliant at seeing opportunities.
Oh, thank you. So I did not come up with this concept. The concept of the fourth floor was born from the wise brain of Breen Sullivan. And Breen is another career in-house attorney. And I kept running into her at these women in-house general counsel events. And she had this idea, and every time I saw her, I was like, tell me more about the idea, tell me more. And it kept coming along. Here's the idea. If you think about it, men have been like investing in each other and putting each other on their boards since the beginning of boards, right? And we should be doing the same. And the theory is the fourth floor is made up of women who own businesses, small businesses, and then women who are at a place in their career where they would make great board advisors for those businesses. And putting two highly motivated women. And when I say women, I mean, self-identifying as women. We also take allies. I'm not anti-men. I always like to put that out. I happen to be married to a man, whatever. Not anti-men. We love allies. But by putting together these two groups of highly motivated women, magic happens. For the companies that are trying to scale, they now have amazing board members, their networks, their insights, their expertise that's really going to help them scale. And then for the professionals who are now board members, they can use these board seats to leverage, a board seat at a bigger company. Because a lot of these professional women want to be on the board of a publicly traded company, and they don't know how. And this is how. Start small and get bigger. And also, as a side benefit to all of this, a lot of these women before maybe the financial issue happened, have some money to invest. And so maybe they'll invest in angel investment in some of these smaller companies, and that's really going to help them scale. It's really just a matter of putting together a community, an ecosystem of highly motivated people to help everyone scale.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, again, goes back to this pattern that I see with your own careers, like this forward planning, in terms of, so these women who want to be on board, you can't just show up and say, I want to be on board. Do I have the skill set? Do I have the experience? And if you haven't been, like, you think public boards will generalize, what are they looking for? They're looking for P&L responsibility. They're looking for international experience. They're looking for someone who's been in the C-suite. Okay, if you don't have any of those things that would make you an obvious board choice, how else can you do it? And you think of someone like yourself, 9 years at Etsy, you scaled a company and you took it public. There we go. Like, someone else now looking at, hey, I need a board member for a company going public. There you go. But,
right.
Someone who's like, oh, when I retire from the practice of law, or when this happens, 5-6 years, I'd like to be on a board. Well, you got to start that networking now.
Exactly. And what we've seen, the data shows that I think over 90% of board seats are filled through networking, through people that they know. And so it's really a matter of talking with people and figuring out your bandwidth, figuring out what I call your superpower. Like, what are you bringing to this board?
Yeah,
what kind of company do you want to be on a board of? It's not just a matter of God coming down, picking you up and putting you on this board. That has never happened. I don't think. Has it happened?
I'm laughing. I went to an event years ago. I think I was still the president of 85 Broads, the global business network for women, now known as Elevate. And it was 100 women in hedge fund event I went to, and it was on women on boards. And I remember they had the panel. One of the panelists was Diana Taylor. And I remember this remark because it was so good. And they were talking about how you get board seats, and everyone's like, saying this, that, and the other thing. And she was the only one who was like, there was a board recruiter, but she was the only one sitting on some public boards, Diana. And so she finally was like, time out. And she leaned forward and looked at everyone and she said, you want to get on board? I'm going to tell you how to get on board. You got to network, and you got to network with old white guys.
Yeah, that's it.
Look at the composition of the public boards. All right, who is there? Who are those people? Where do they hang out? That's what I network with. But there is this other path, So.
I mean, that's it. I mean, I think when people think about a board, they're thinking about the old white guys. They're thinking about the ex-CEOs. They're thinking about the VCs. But diversity anywhere is so beneficial to business. I mean, pull up like how many different studies, and it's true time and time again. But they're not going to pick somebody unless they know them, right? And so it's really just networking and talking with people and figuring out what you want and how to get it. And that's what we're trying to do with the fourth floor.
That's awesome. And I'm also going to say that the importance of the whisper network, as I say, but it's also important, in terms of who's talking about you, is our startup founders talking about how you're contributing and how you're helpful, because that's something a lot of people listen to. And I know a lot of VCs, that's valuable to them to hear about someone they don't know about. If it's like, all right, what are the founders saying about them? Is this person adding value?
And the VCs want great people on their board too, because it helps with their investment.
Right. See, hey, win-win for everybody.
Win-win for everybody, but it also really, it's hard work, right? Yeah. It's hard work for me to think, what are my superpowers? What should I be writing on my board bio? How can I really leverage my skills to get myself to the next level? It's way easier to just wait for the hand of God to come and grab me, which is never going to happen, right? This is hard work. It's hard work to be a founder and think about what is my company going to look like in a couple of years, and who do I need to get my back to leverage their skills to get me to that place. That's hard work.
Yeah. But it's work you got to put in. Talk about some of the programming you do with the fourth floor. And, it might sound like I'm getting you to do like marketing for the fourth floor, but you've got so many things you do. And I love that you've got this sort of double-sided, networking community platform that's not, here's the benefits for women who want to be on boards. Here's the benefits for female founders. And you're doing programming for both. And I think it would be just helpful for people to hear and know what that is.
So we are doing programming for both, and we're also doing programming to bring them together. And one of the things that I'm most excited about that we've been up to, we call Board Boot Camp. And we did it live when we were allowed to do things live. And it sold out immediately. And it was just so a wonderful, wonderful evening. Connections were made. And what we really did was we thought about having Board Boot Camp just for founders and then Board Boot Camp just for people on boards. And then we realized that, listen, these founders are going to make great board members also. And we need them to really hear what we're saying to the other group. And so what Board Boot Camp is we talk about like reframing yourself as a board member. Like, just think about what a traditional board member looks like in your head. And if you don't think you look like that, wrong, you look like that. You should be on a board. And then thinking about reframing what a traditional company looks like, who deserves a board, like who is qualified to being on a board and what kind of company deserves a board. And we talk those things through and we talk about best practices. We have some really great brainstorming docs. And then what was the best part of the night is when we basically said to everybody, listen, your next board seat could be in this room. Your next board member could be in this room. And it was like light bulbs went off. And people just started schmoozing and handing out business cards and connecting on LinkedIn. And afterwards, I got so many emails being like, Sarah, I met with this person and we went to lunch and this person. And it's funny because you look through the RSVP list and you think, oh, these two people would make, would do great together. And you try to like maneuver it. It's sort of like dating. Like you don't know what the chemistry is going to be like until you put two people in a room. Yeah. But some of the connections that were made, I didn't see, and they're going strong. And it's wonderful.
There was something about bringing together those motivated, self-selecting groups who, are proactively trying to make something happen for themselves, as opposed to waiting for the hand of God or whatever you believe in that is going.
We know why we're in the room. Yeah. We know why we are here. It's not by accident. We're here to talk about a very, very specific thing, and that is how we are going to scale our careers and companies through board seats. That's what we're here for.
And that's like one of my favorite pieces of advice is I say to people, stop committing random acts of networking. Understand why you're in the bloody room. And this is a perfect example of that. I want to get on a board seat or whatever your career goal is, but we'll use this one. I want to be, where are people bringing together that information and those insights, and making it happen?
Right.
That's
what we're doing. Yeah.
Awesome. And you're doing everything online now?
Yeah, we are, because apparently that's a thing. And, we thought about, and so what we're going to be doing is we're still going to be talking about the content. We're going to be providing the brainstorming documents, and then we're going to be using technology to put different people in the room with each other. Yeah. And speaking of the room, another thing that we're doing, which brings people online, is having basically a two-sided marketplace with people who are looking for board seats and people who are looking to fill board seats. Because, again, once you do that hard work of what you're looking for your company or what you're looking for, to be a board member, we'll host it, and then you can like scroll through it, sort of like dating, swipe, see what looks good, have a conversation, see if there's some sort of match. And so we took that online before this whole pandemic happened, because we realized that this is really going to be the future of the fourth floor, is encouraging people to put what they want out into the universe and then look to see what else is out there.
Yeah. And when we're back together again, it's again that people may be more proactive at one of your events, in terms of looking over the RSVP list to say, oh, there's that person whose profile I've been checking out. I got to, reach out to them in advance, make sure they show up and all that kind of good stuff. Well, this is like amazing. I was just thinking of all the other questions and things that I have for you, but, I'm going to preserve your time. Ask you to come back another time. I want to summarize some of the stuff. I was writing some notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. Some of the tips I've taken away from your amazing advice today: earn your skills. Like, don't wait for someone to do it for you. Earn your skills. Figure out what skills you need, earn them. Reach out with ideas, not just pointing out a problem. Reach out with ideas to solve the problem. Show a value add. Take worries off the plate of somebody else when you're reaching out. Be specific. And if need be, reframe your career.
Yeah, let's do it. And create your own planet.
Create your own planet. Well, which is kind of what you did.
No, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I think that whenever something terrible happens in your life, whenever you're in a terrible place, I find it empowering to write a list and just try to like see a little bit of movement. I think when I tell the story about how I got my job at Etsy, it feels very linear. Like, okay, Sarah, sure, you were an artist and now then you went to Etsy. I heard no a lot. I failed a lot. I was in a ball crying on the floor being like, I can't afford rent. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't think a lot of people talk about that, but still to this day, I reach out to conferences, I get rejected. I reach out to like law schools to speak or whatever, writing things, I get rejected all the time. And you just got to keep pushing through that and learning.
Yeah, that's like amazing, like sort of advice, like just all the cherry on the top of all your amazing advice today is like, there's never a time that you stop. You can stop trying things. The sort of, if you know what you want to do and you know what skills you've got, self-promotion is not a dirty word. You got to keep doing it. And that's phenomenal. Next time we chat, let's talk jewelry as well. And let's talk about your failed startup.
I have a failed startup and my jewelry is pretty terrible. I mean, my jewelry is beautiful. I don't market it. You got to prioritize.
Yeah. No, well, we might have to talk about that next time. So thank you so much for coming on my little adventure today and for dropping so many career pearls. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who's been watching. This will be up on YouTube. I will also post links on LinkedIn and other places. And we'll see you next time. More conversations this week. Thank you.